Hi everyone, welcome back to Spare Room Studio. This is Jackie. Today I'm going to share with you some nice mail that I've received recently. So I am going to unpack it for you now and let's get into it and see what I received. I was contacted by the lovely people at Get Creative 6 and they asked me would I like to receive some of their books to review, and I very excitedly said yes please. Get Creative 6 books aren't generally the first publishers that are offered to us here in Australia. Through Amazon, for example, we tend to get different publishers offered to us first. So I'm really excited to have a look at these books because I do not own any by Get Creative 6. And I've seen other colour tubers colour in them and talk about them and so on, and the paper, and I've had nothing to compare it to, so now I do. So thanks to Get Creative 6 for sending these. They sent So Many Cute Animals by Kimma Parrish, Love and Dystopia by Anzu, Garden of Dreams, A Magical World of Make-Believe to Colour by Yoshimi Sakaguchi, and Ken Matsuda's Ecotopia, and Epic Love by Anna Uren. So if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you would know that I actually have these two books already, but I was quite interested to receive these ones from Get Creative 6 because here in Australia, when we purchase through Amazon Australia, for example, we quite often are offered different publisher versions of books, and so I thought it might be interesting to have a look and see if there is very much difference between the different publishing houses. So here in Australia I received Romantasy, so that's by Anna Uren, and it's a very similar book. There are just a few differences about it, so I will go through that with you. And also I do have The Creatures of Ken Matsuda, the Hachette Heroes French version, and you've seen me colour in this one on camera quite a bit. It is one of my favourite books, if not my ultimate favourite book. So I've coloured in this one quite a bit. So I thought it would be good to do a comparison of these two books as well, and there is quite a noticeable difference in size here. That's the first thing that I noticed, and also the order in which the images have been placed into the book is a little bit different, and also the placement of the images on some of the pages. So I thought it might be interesting to go through the differences in those, because I know I have a couple of viewers who have been waiting for the English version of this one and didn't know whether the paper was going to be what they wanted, and were wondering what were the differences or the similarities between these books. So I will address that in this video. I will also do some colouring and we'll see whether it feels different to me. So I'm quite interested in doing that, and I'm very excited to have some new illustrators that I have not experienced before. So Kimma Parrish is new to me, and this is quite a small format book compared to some of the others, which is really nice to have for those days when you just want to colour something, of a smaller format, a little bit quicker to get done maybe. So I'm really interested to have a good look through this one. And then I do not have any books by this artist, Yoshimi Sakaguchi. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but quick look that I've had so far, this is a beautiful book. I'm really keen to have a go and see what the paper is like and colour a different illustrator style there. Love and Dystopia, this one, a manga colouring book, is very different to anything else I own. Very different style, but I'm quite pleased to see single-sided pages. It means I can use alcohol markers and just about anything really when it's a single-sided page. So very different style to what I'm used to. So I'm quite keen to have a go in that one as well. So I will do some flip throughs of these in another video, I think. But in this particular video, I will concentrate on these two books and the similarities and the differences between Epic Love and Romantasy, and Ecotopia and The Creatures of Ken Matsuda. With the Epic Love book, there's really no discernible difference either in the look of the covers, other than the Get Creative 6 version has some very nice glossy shiny elements on there that is not on the LomArt book. So that's the only difference that I can notice there. Now I have coloured in Romantasy. I coloured Wings of Love, and I used alcohol marker and coloured pencil because I didn't think that water was going to go too well on this paper. I found that it didn't react very well when I tried to wet some areas in here. It felt like the paper was going to dissolve. So on this particular book, I might see if I can try some water, and we'll see whether water works. And I'm just trying to get that same image if I can find it. There she is. So this book, this one doesn't appear to be stitched, it appears to be glue bound. And the LomArt book, I think, could be the same. Oh no, the LomArt book is actually stitch bound. Oh, and I'm wrong about the Get Creative 6 book as well. That's stitch bound as well. Yep, definitely stitch bound as well. Yes, I've even got some quite obvious thread there. So they are both stitch bound. So these feel very similar. When Maia described her paper, I thought they were going to be really different, but I don't know if they are. So I'm really keen to get using some water in this book to see how the watercolour reacts on that paper. So that's going to be really interesting. Other than that, let's just have a quick look. We'll have a look at some of the images. I think they're exactly the same. Exactly the same. So there might be a tiny bit of difference in the colour of the printing ink, but they feel pretty much the same. I think maybe Get Creative 6 might be marginally not thicker, but a little bit firmer. This feels a little bit softer. So I'm going to get colouring, and we'll see how I go. So off camera I had a little avalanche of books and damaged this one, unfortunately, and I'm really cross with myself. So ignore that little bit of damage to start with. That's what came after I received the books when I didn't take care of them properly. So I'm just going to do a quick flip through here, and it is exactly the same as Romantasy. There is a title for each page and maybe a quote or a question underneath it. And I'm sorry that the bottom of the book here is a little bit off screen, but you still get to get the gist of most of the pages. So if you have Romantasy, the LomArt edition, this one is exactly the same. The pictures are the same and they're in the same order. apart from the paper being maybe a little bit more firm in the Get Creative 6 version, I can't really see much of a difference at all between the two books, other than the cover of Epic Love has some glossy finishes that the LomArt edition don't. So the work of Anna is very lovely. It's quite clean line work. It's quite fine. It's not overly thick or heavy. It's very detailed, so if you're not into very detailed work, you might find this book a bit of a struggle. There are a lot of people, but there are many other elements to colour, and there are some scenes, you know, different types of backgrounds and so on. But it's a very beautiful book. I like the way that Anna draws women. They have quite strong faces, and they're not drawn in that sort of cutesy whimsical style. They're a little bit more realistic, but I have found them still to be reasonably easy to colour. And this book, of course, has got some men to colour as well, which is always nice because they're not overly represented in a lot of colouring books. That page with the spider is not my favourite because I'm not a fan of spiders. But these other ones with the flowers and floral backgrounds, the steampunk, for example, are all really interesting. I'm going to use Staedtler double-ended water-based markers. They're not the ones that are called watercolour. They're water-based fibre tip markers. And I'm going to use Stabilo Pen 68 to start with, and I'm going to use them as watercolours by scribbling onto a ceramic plate. So any sort of non-porous surface will do. So plastic lid, plastic plate, whatever you've got. And this little old ceramic plate has been serving me quite well. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pop my water over to the side over here. I've been finding that this water brush that I'm using, I do like to put some water on from a pot as well as out of the brush. So what I'm going to do is get started with wetting the paper first. It's one of my favourite ways to work. If you've watched me, you've seen me do this many a time. And it's one of my favourite things to do because I just like to watch how this colour moves and blends and bleeds into that wet paper of its own accord. See how it's all separating and bleeding and doing its own thing? That's very much my favourite, one of my favourite ways to work. So I thought that because I had watched Maia and working in her book, and it seemed to cope with water very well, I wanted to experience that myself. And I probably use a little bit more water than Maia does. Sorry, Maia. I think from what I've watched, Maia, you use your paints a little bit more concentrated than I do normally. So here I'm just working with it onto dry paper to just see what that feels like, because it doesn't blend and move and bleed like it does up here into the damp paper. So I want to experience all of it and see what this paper will do, and then I might have to get brave with the LomArt edition and really put the paper on, water on the paper the same with that one, so that we can get a true comparison. Paper doesn't feel like it's going to dissolve under the water like I got the feeling with the LomArt edition. And I have got quite a bit of water there, so we'll see how things come out. I am expecting it to buckle. That's a given. It would be unrealistic to expect that it's not going to buckle. Now, I wasn't sure whether this is one of those cats that do not have hair, but the way that Anna has drawn it along here suggests that there is hair. So I've decided to treat it a bit like a Siamese. Now, that might not be correct. I'm not a cat owner. I don't know much about cats, so I could be way off the scale here with this one, but it doesn't matter. It's a colouring book and we can do whatever we like in colouring books. So that's what I'm going for here. I've got the idea in my mind. Is it a blue Siamese they call it? That's what I had in my mind when I chose the colours. That's what it reminds me of. But the face up here looks very much like one of those cats that doesn't have hair. So I'm a little bit confused. And not being a cat aficionado, I wasn't really 100% what I was doing, but this is the choice, the decision that I've made and I'm running with. So in this section where you see me colouring and adding colour to the pages, there will be elements that will be sped up and have voiceover, because you don't need to see every single little detail that I'm doing. However, if there's something that I think that you need to be made aware of, I will of course let you know that. So I'm actually liking the way that the ink is separating and the way the colours are working here. The paper will be buckled, but this is precisely why I do this particular method in my colouring books, is because this is what I hope to achieve, and I really like it a lot. Makes me happy. So I've decided to speed the footage up now so that I don't take too much of your time up, and I'm just continuing on working with the diluted colour into wet paper. I'm also painting onto dry areas of paper with the diluted paint and various sort of concentrations of paint. I apologise for the book being off camera here. I didn't realise how bad it was. But it will improve as we go along. So I've done this little rose down here, and I've used Stabilo Pen 68, and I'm really liking the way that that's working. So I'm just going to put a bit of extra colour onto my plate. These nibs are a lot smaller, but they are working okay with this method on the plate. So this paper is obviously very new to me. I don't own any Get Creative 6 books, as I've mentioned. So this is a really good opportunity for me to try all the different techniques that I normally use and see just how much the paper will put up with. So I'm doing lots of different ways. I'm using a lot of water, very little water. I'm diluting the colour a lot. Sometimes I'm using it fairly concentrated without too much dilution. just to get a feel for how the paper reacts and how it feels and so on. I think this particular paper feels very nice. It's smooth and it's quite a pure white, you know, it's not tinted in any way. So I like the way that the colours are appearing on the paper. They're very clean and clear. I just feel like with Anna's drawing style that it appears, I keep saying the word, but it feels rather fresh, very, very clear and clean. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just using the different colours, trying to build a little bit of depth of colour up in some places, and then I need to let it dry and come back and rework it a little bit. So now I'm going to work in Romantasy, which is the LomArt version, and I'm going to use the same colours that I used in Epic Love, and I'm going to see whether this paper does in fact react similarly. So at least then, depending on where you live and you know what publisher's book you're going to receive, you'll have a better idea of what is going to come to you and what you're going to be able to achieve with it. So I'm going to try and colour it very similar to how I coloured in the Get Creative 6 version. I do feel that I may have put a little bit of extra water onto this particular page. I can see, you know, watching the replay that I did probably use more water, and I was pushing the paper a little bit just to see what would happen. What did happen was I felt that the paper reacted a little bit more quickly to the water than the Get Creative 6 book did. So that paper seemed to allow the colour and the water to sit on the paper for a little bit longer before it looked like it was being absorbed, and this particular paper tended to get a little bit spotty. You know, it gives you that impression that the paper is going to dissolve when it's going to break up, and that happened a little bit in the dark blue area, but not as bad as I had expected. When I did the other page, I felt like that was going to be a real problem, and I stopped using water. So I may have actually stopped a little bit too soon with the previous page that I coloured in this book, because once I sort of stopped agitating the paper, it didn't really behave too much differently to the Get Creative 6 book. So I think that I'm going to have to admit that I was wrong. I jumped to the conclusion that this particular version by LomArt was not going to be very suitable for using water-based mediums and watercolour in. But I think it will be able to be done. It may just need to be done a little bit more cautiously than what would be possible with the Get Creative 6 book. So I just wanted to show you that I was working in similar ways in both books, trying to recreate the image and work as close to what I had done in the Get Creative 6 book, so that I could make a fair comparison about the paper. Okay, the next step for me, I'm going to put the water aside and I'm just going to try to do a little bit of blending directly on the paper with markers. So I'm going to use the Stettler to start with, and this is the Get Creative 6 book. So it's not entirely dry, but it's getting pretty close. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work onto the paper with the marker and then blend the colours on the paper, hopefully, and we'll see how that works together. So this paper is very smooth. It's very pleasant to colour with a marker on actually, and particularly with this nib, it feels very nice. So if I forget to tell you, it's easy to remember that this is the LomArt edition Romantasy with the alcohol marker bleed through on that page. So if I forget to tell you, that's one way that you can tell which book it is. So this one is still quite damp. It is taking a little bit of time to dry, but that's okay. I'm going to work off to the side there with the green like I did with the other book. So again, you can see I'm just following the same process that I did in the Get Creative 6 book, and I'm doing it now in the LomArt edition. I really don't notice any difference at all when I work this particular method on either book. It just ended up with exactly the same results. So back to the Get Creative 6 book, which is Epic Love. And I just thought that I'd share with you what I was doing here. I'm going to do it on the bird. So you can work directly onto the paper. And this is the Stabilo Pen 68. And it works okay if you work directly onto the paper and then use a little bit of water to blend out that colour as well. It works very nicely, and not every book will do this smoothly. So I do feel like the paper in this book has some sort of sizing that is enough for you to use a water-based marker and then be able to drag that colour out and it smoothly blends out. And that doesn't happen on all paper. Some paper absorbs the ink too quickly and you just don't get to move it in that way. It gets very blotchy, streaky and so on. But this particular paper, it's not doing that. And it kind of reminds me of good cardstock, where you get that opportunity where the ink sits on the surface long enough that you can use some water to blend it and move it around before it actually gets absorbed into the paper. So it doesn't seem to be significant bleed through working that way either. So That's good to know. Also, you can re-wet areas where you have already applied colour and lift a little bit of colour off with the brush, as I'm doing in this section here. Version of Epic Love, a little bit more than I have in Romantasy, but I think I've got enough to have a fair comparison now. So this is the cover, and this is the page that I chose to do, called The Messenger. Really happy with the way that it's going. It's behaving just as I would expect colouring book paper to behave with water. It is bending and cockling a little bit, perfectly normal, no worse than any other book that I've had, and in fact it's probably better than some. So that's going really well. I'm using water-based markers with the water. So just for comparison's sake, here is Romantasy by LomArt Publishing. I thought that after watching Maia colour her book, that I wasn't going to be able to do the same thing in my LomArt version, and it turns out that yes, you can use water. You do have to be a little bit more careful. There's just a slight difference in the paper that means that the Get Creative 6 version is coping with the water a little bit better, but it can be done in the LomArt version, maybe just being a little bit more careful and a little bit less water might be better, but this one has certainly wrinkled more than the Get Creative 6 version, but it is coming along quite well. So I do have to admit that I was very wrong in the assumptions that I made after watching Maia using her book. I really didn't think I was going to be able to do the same. So that's how that one's going. So I will continue to finish this page, and you will see in a completed pages video sometime in the future. And I'd like to take this opportunity again to thank the people at Get Creative 6 for sending me some books to review. Please ignore this. This is my fault. I'm very cross with myself for damaging the book. But that is the cover, Epic Love by Anna Uren. So besides the size difference, one of the first things that's apparent to me with this particular book that is different to the Hachette Heroes French version is that the order in which the images appear is slightly different, and that is down to the fact that they've put all the information, coloured information about the pages and so on, is at the back of the book. So maybe we'll go to the back of the book first. And the book is stitch bound, which is nice because it does tend to lay flatter, and I always like that. And also because I use a lot of water, stitch bound books are great for me because they have less chance of falling apart on me like glue bound books do. So at the back of the book here we have the coloured pages where Ken gives some colouring tips of how to go about colouring the image and using watercolour paints in the first instance, step by step what to do. And then in the next image it's colouring with pencils, so some tips and ideas of how to approach colouring the image with coloured pencils. A little bit there on thoughts on colour. And then we have some of the colour plates from the book all together here at the back at once. Now I know some people prefer it to be this way. The original book, well, I can't speak about the original book actually. I can only talk about this one, which is the Hachette Heroes French version. This book has the colour plates interspersed in the book, and you can colour side by side, so you can either use that as an exact guide to try and mimic, or just use it for inspiration. So that's one of the first differences as well. And we have those in here, which is lovely. And then we have all the list of works with the QR codes, and they are here in the back of this one as well. Same sort of thing. So you've got a coloured thumbnail with a QR code that will take you online to have a look at the original artwork. So that is the same. Okay. What I have noticed is that there are some pages that I think maybe because the format is a little bit smaller, they've been scanned in differently. I'm not really well up on printing processes, so this one struck me. I was watching Maia's flick through of this book, and I thought that they had cut off part of the image here, but it's not that at all. What has happened is the image in this book is on the right hand side of the book and the right hand side of the page, right to the edge of the page, whereas this one's been moved over that little bit. So I thought that, see if I can do the best I can here to get these in together. I just show you what the difference is there. So it looks a little bit cut off, but it isn't. All the image is actually there. It's just been moved over this way a little bit. And I think maybe the scale of the picture is just marginally smaller. So while we're on this page, we'll just have a look at the colour of the paper. The colour of the Get Creative 6 paper is more of a warmer, almost creamy white, whereas this is quite a brilliant white that gives you that blue hint in the Hachette Heroes version. And when it comes to how it feels, I'd say for weight, and this is just my perception because I don't have any tools to check this properly, but for the thickness and the weight, it feels very much the same. So once I colour in this book, I will know whether it feels any different, you know, with the colouring mediums that I choose. But there's no real discernible difference in the weight of the paper. It's just slightly smaller. And if I could say anything about the print, I thought from watching the images on the flip through on Maia's video, I thought that the print might have been a bit darker, the ink may have been a bit darker in this particular book, the Get Creative 6 book, but when I see it now, there isn't very much difference. Again, I would think that maybe there's a slight difference in the colour of the black, but that's it. You know, there's no real obvious difference other than that. And you can possibly see here that it's exactly the same photo, same image, sorry, not photo. It's the same. So the only thing that's changed is on some of the pages that were on the edge of the page, they've actually been moved inwards a little bit, which is a little bit confusing, but we might, you know, you might have to be a little bit more creative and perhaps put some washi tape or collage paper or something down this side as a bit of a border, and then have the image coming out of it. That could be a possibility. But other than that, you know, it is the same. It's the same. It's just in slightly different order, slightly smaller, scaled down a little bit. So we'll check this one out here as well. So that's the fish. So let's have a look if we can find those fish. There we go. So the fish are on the moved over to more of a central position in the page, whereas on the Hachette Heroes version it is right over on the edge of the paper. And you know, possibly slightly different colour in the printing, in the ink. Again, it's, you know, barely noticeable. It's probably more noticeable on the screen than it is in real life. So, you know, from looking at it in that respect, I don't think there's really too much difference, to be honest. It will be interesting to get colouring. See if I can find this page here. So we can have a look at this side by side as well. So very little difference there either. So if you've been hanging out waiting for the English version, I can't see a lot of discernible difference just yet from the French version, other than the language being different, of course. So what I might do, I'm thinking about maybe choosing one of these images I have already coloured and colour it in here and see how I find it. Not sure yet, but I am going to be doing some colouring and I can give you a good comparison then. This later, and I'm going to colour in Ecotopia or Ecotopia, depending on how you want to pronounce that. So just to remind you, that's the cover. And thank you again to Get Creative 6. Now I'm going to do the comparison between this particular one and the Hachette Heroes version, which is The Creatures of Ken Matsuda. So if you're unfamiliar with the cover of that book. Now if you have watched the channel for any length of time, you will know that I have coloured in that book for quite a bit of time, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I would say it's one of my favourite books, if not, it is my favourite book. And so for some reason this particular little bird has been catching my eye when I've been watching Maia's flip through, and I thought that I would like to have a go with the Gansai Tambi watercolors in this particular book and see how it compares quality wise with the French version, so that I can give some of you an idea, because I know there's been a few viewers who've been hanging out for the English version of this book for quite some time. It can be difficult to get hold of some of the foreign versions or publishings of certain books, and so you know, we can wait forever sometimes to get these books in our own countries and in English. And so I thought that I would just give this one a go and give you an idea how the quality compares, and you know, the differences or similarities, so that you can make a bit more of an informed choice about whether you want to go for one publishing house over another. Now I have got Ken's original painting on my iPad off to the side to give me some ideas for colour placement. Again, I don't think I will ever be able to fully mimic his beautiful work, but I do like to use it for some colour placement ideas and colour ideas. So that's off to the side, and I'm going to get started. I probably won't finish it because it does take me quite some time sometimes to complete a full page with watercolour, but it will be able to be used as a comparison for how the paint looks and feels and works, and how the paper is and so on, just to give you, you know, that little bit of a taste of what it is like. So I'm using the Kuretake Gansai Tambi paints, and I've been watching Maia. I know I keep talking about you, Maia, but I have been watching Maia's flip throughs and what have you, and she talks about this particular book and some of the others that Get Creative 6 have recently released. Sorry, I'm doing lots of ums, but I'm trying to concentrate and think and talk, and it doesn't always compute very well. So I've been watching Maia's flip throughs of these books, but also I watch Maia an awful lot anyway. I'm just going to move that to the side and put that down. So I do tend to watch a lot of Maia's videos anyway because I really love her style. I love the freedom that she has in her colouring books. Sorry, I just have a coffee off to the side here. She has a unique style, and she has lots of freedom in her colouring and painting and so on. And I find it really inspiring, and so I know I reference Maia a lot, but that's why. So Maia uses her paints, or she appears to use her paints much more concentrated than I do. And of course this is just an assumption that I'm saying from watching a video on a screen, and in real life of course something different could be happening, because we do get a certain perception from looking at a flat screen rather than having somebody right in front of us colouring and painting and so on. So please take what I say with that in mind. But I do think that Maia uses her paints a little bit more concentrated than me, with a little bit less water. So she doesn't seem to get quite so many problems with the bleed through and the buckling as I do, because my natural tendency is to use lots of water, and that comes from having painted with watercolors over many years, and that's just the tendency and the style that I seem to lean towards and have picked up and developed, and it's going to be different for everybody. However, because you do potentially watch me quite a bit, so you've seen me work in various books over time, and you know that I slosh the water around and so on, this will still be a good comparison for you in terms of what you've seen me do in other books and the results that I've got in other books. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, as a comparison, it can be quite limiting, but if you take those things into context, you can still get some value out of watching these comparison type videos. Okay, so I'm trying to look at what I've got here, and I might use a little bit of this Art Nouveau set as well, because it's got a different colour range and slightly different look about it. So that's a look at the colours that I'm using so far, and they're quite rich, although they are, compared to what I normally lean towards, they're probably a little bit more muted, but they are still quite rich in colour. So I thought I'd try and pick colours that are going to show up on camera for you and give you a good idea, and that you're going to be able to see quite clearly, hopefully. And I've just realised I haven't even put a backing sheet behind my page, so I'm going to have to do that in a minute, because inevitably I get some sort of bleed through because of the amount of water that I use. So just bear with me one moment. Place that behind there, because I might ruin the immediate page picture behind but I don't necessarily want to damage subsequent pages if I can help it. So, and you can already see here I've got a bit of a difference going on with the concentration levels of paint. Some of this is much more concentrated, and up here is quite a bit more diluted at the moment. So I'm just using the original painting of Ken's to give me an idea where to place colours and what sort of colours I might think about using. But of course I don't know what brand of paint he's using, what sort of watercolour he's using, or any of that information, and so my picture is never going to be exactly the same as what Ken's is, but I can get, you know, a reasonable interpretation and use his ideas and his colours for a base point to work from and to be inspired by. So at the moment I feel like this could be a little bit more absorbent than the Hachette Heroes version, but it's holding up okay so far. So let me keep going with some more diluted washes down here, again looking at what Ken's got on his and getting some ideas. I've got a pot of water, even though I'm using a water brush. This particular water brush, I do like the nib on it, or the, you know, the brush on it, but the rate that the water comes out of it is a little bit unreliable at times, and so I have actually been, I've got the barrel filled up, but I have been dipping it into a pot of water to get extra water on there without squeezing the brush, because when I squeeze it I find that the water is all over the place. So if you're wondering what I'm doing there, that is what I'm doing. And let's just get some different types of pinky reds going if I can. And let's get some different colour going on in here. So I'm getting pretty close now to being finished with the watercolour, but I'm using some colours from the Art Nouveau range from the Kuretake Gansai Tambi paints just to get a cooler sort of brown here to finish off the tail section of the bird. So I've added a little bit more colour to this, and I've still got a few damp areas there. It is cockling a little bit, which again I would expect from any colouring book page. And I do have a bit of bleed through, and as you saw, I have been using quite a bit of water, so that isn't altogether unexpected either. So does it bleed more than the Hachette Heroes version? Perhaps. It is a bit hard to say definitively. Let me have a think if I've got anything here that I can show you the other side of that I haven't already worked on. This one, there is a little bit of bleed through on there from the back of that page. And what I tend to do is when I've had bleed through on a page, I work on that page and cover it up straight away so that it doesn't bother me too much when I'm flipping through the book. So this page, you can see that there's quite a bit of cockling and so on, and I did have bleed through. Again, lots of cockling where I've actually almost put holes in the paper. So it does happen with this book as well. So I won't say that it doesn't. It does happen in that book. And let's get on with doing a little bit more on this one. So what I want to do with this one is I want to have a go with these Gansai Tambi granulating colours. I bought them for my birthday back in August. I used some of my birthday money to purchase them, and I've barely used them. So this is very experimental as well. And I'm going to use the colour called Cosmic Olive. I've put some water in there to soften that up. And I'm going to use Cosmic Olive. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do it all over the page, but I'm going to do it in parts of the background where I'm hoping it's going to add something a little bit more interesting than having a plain background. So trying to get close to my image without bleeding over it if I can. And you might see this paper, it is soaking in very, very quickly. On the Hachette Heroes version, it tends to sit on the paper for a little bit of time before it soaks in. And you can see it's starting to develop some of those dots that you see sometimes on paper that's very, very wet. It almost looks like it's going to dissolve under the water. That's the impression that it gives me. But usually when it dries, those dots are not visible afterwards. So let's have a go with these granulating. And I want it to be quite wet for the granulating colours to do their thing. So, you know, that's why I had to sort of purposely soak that paper, because it needs to be wet for the granulating colours to do their stuff. So and this is a test, so I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen because I haven't really used the granulating colours enough just yet. But and then I'll drop a bit of clean water in there again. Try not to get too close to the flowers. I don't want to dirty the flowers too much. So it's a little bit unexpected what can happen with the granulating colours. You're not going to necessarily get the same effect twice. And for me, that's part of the appeal of using something like this. You know, it's a little bit of a surprise what's going to happen each time. And of course I'm going to get better results with the granulating colours if I do use them on watercolour paper, as they're designed to be used that way. But we all know that us colouring book fans like to try just about everything and push the envelope as far as we can in terms of our supplies and what we're going to use in our books. So I had to speed the drying process up using a hairdryer because it was quite humid when I was painting this particular page. So you can see that the page is significantly cockled or buckled, and that is exactly what I would expect with a colouring book page. It is probably slightly worse than the Hachette Heroes version, but still not unexpected for me. I would anticipate this happening in a lot of books. I think if I was to put a heavy weight on the book and have it sitting for a while, that would help flatten it out, and it will also potentially flatten out using coloured pencil on there. Also, if you colour the other side of the page and use coloured pencil on that side, I find that it does tend to help flatten the page out quite well. For comparison, here's the Hachette Heroes version, the French version, and you can see I've got lots of cockling and buckling on this page as well. Now, it was probably worse than this when I first did it, but in the bookcase and with heavy things on it, it does tend to flatten out. I have also tried ironing some pages in this book, but I find that you still get all of that on the edges even when you try to gently iron it. So that is purely a result of me treating my books pretty badly. So as far as I'm concerned, if you've been hanging out for the English version of this book because you've found it difficult to get hold of the original Japanese or the French versions, then yes, I'd recommend it. You'll have to go carefully with water in terms of don't do what I've done. But if you use your watercolours with a little bit more concentrated approach and not so much water, or you could use perhaps watercolour pencils, ink tints, all of those sorts of water-soluble things with small amounts of water, I think you're going to be fine. I did get some bleed through, and again, that is not unusual for me. It's because I am so almost cavalier and destructive with what I do, but that's my personal approach and that's what I like to do. So my books do get quite a beating, so I might work with the coloured pencils on top of this and develop it a bit more, and you'll see that in a completed pages video in the future. But I would be happy to recommend this book to you. I think it's a lovely book. The paper Feels very nice and smooth, so I'm sure there will be some sort of coloured pencil that will work well with this. Water-based markers, you don't necessarily have to dilute them, you could work with those. Gel pens, whatever you want to use. So just to finish up, I am really happy with both of these books that I've worked on in this video. This is the Epic Love, and I think both of them have performed as well as I could expect with the way that I work with them. I'm not surprised that, you know, they've cockled and buckled and all those things and bleed through, because that's what I do to everything. I think they've behaved quite as you would expect, and in this one I'm actually quite pleased with that, because I did use a reasonable amount of water, not as much as this one, but I used a reasonable amount, and this book I think when it's closed up will flatten out as well. Same thing if you work over the top with coloured pencils over the top of it, that tends to flatten out a lot of that cockling as well. Also, in this particular book, if I worked on this page, that would help flatten it out. This one being single-sided obviously is not going to happen, but again, if you're prepared for it, you know, you can work towards minimising that by lessening the water. At least you know what you're going to get, what to expect. And I've been really pleased with the quality of both of these books. So thank you again to Get Creative 6, and also for allowing me to demonstrate and compare the differences or the similarities between these books with the other versions. So if this is what gets offered to you in your country and this is what you can easily access, you like the artwork, I would say go for it, because they are very nice books, both of them. I hope you've enjoyed seeing this little bit of a comparison. You will see me work in those other books and do some flip throughs coming up very soon, hopefully. And yeah, if you'd like to let me know what you think in the comments, feel free to put a comment for me and let me know what you think. If you have these books, how do you find them? And I'd be interested to hear your opinions on that as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Take care everyone, bye now. Future editing Jackie here to just say that I ended up using Artex coloured pencils on this page just to see what would happen with it, and I do feel like it is starting to flatten out a little bit more with the pencil on there. So that will be an option for you if you like to work with a watercolour base and coloured pencils. It does flatten that paper out, and I think under a heavy weight that it's going to flatten out even more. So I'm really happy with that. It took the picture in a totally different direction, much bolder than I had with the watercolour on its own, but I think it was worth doing just to see what would happen with the paper.